Dad told me you're nothing without family. I'm everything without toxic family, and proof is in my success. My dad's voice bounced off the restaurant walls like he wanted the whole place to hear it. You're nothing without family, he said, leaning across the table, finger pointed just short of my chest. The bread basket sat between us like a tiny peace offering nobody wanted, and I could smell his aftershave mixed with the hot, oily scent of fries from the kitchen. My hands were folded in my lap so tight my nails bit into my palms. I felt heat crawl up my neck, that familiar mix of humiliation and anger that used to make me shrink. My mom sat beside him with her mouth set in a hard line, eyes flicking toward the other diners like she was worried someone might judge us. My younger brother stared down at his phone, pretending he wasn't there. You think you're so special because you moved away, my dad added, voice dripping with contempt. But you've forgotten who you are. Without us, you're nothing. I stared at him for a second and realized my body wasn't doing what it used to. My stomach wasn't folding in on itself. My throat wasn't closing. My brain wasn't racing to find the perfect apology to make this stop. Instead, I felt this slow, steady clarity, like a fog lifting. I set my napkin on the table carefully, because my hands were shaking just a little, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Dad, I said, and my voice came out calm in a way that surprised me, I'm not here to be insulted. He scoffed, a sharp little laugh, like boundaries were comedy. Oh, now you have rules, he said. Listen to her. She has rules. He looked around like he expected the restaurant to join in. Family doesn't work like that, Claire. You don't get to set rules. It was a Friday night, the first time I'd agreed to meet them in person in almost a year. I'd told myself I could handle one dinner. I'd told myself I was stronger now. I'd told myself maybe time had softened them. The truth is, time doesn't soften people who don't believe they've done anything wrong. Time just makes them bolder. I'm 32. I live 2 states away from the town I grew up in, and I built my life on purpose. Not the kind of built my life people say when they mean they got lucky. I mean I built it the way you build something when you're constantly told it will collapse, slow, careful, stubborn. I put myself through school with scholarships and night shifts. I worked in an office where my boss mispronounced my name for a year and I still stayed late to learn everything. I started a small consulting business on weekends because I wanted a safety net that wasn't my parents' approval. I bought a little house with creaky floors and terrible paint and I fixed it room by room, because that's what I do. I make things stable. And my family hated every step of it. To them, independence wasn't admirable. It was disrespectful. Every move I made toward my own life was treated like a personal attack. If I got a promotion, my dad would say, "Must be nice, leaving us behind." If I couldn't come home for a holiday because I had to work, my mom would say, "So your job matters more than your family." If I offered to visit on a different weekend, my dad would scoff, "When it's convenient for you." Their love always came with a price tag, obedience. Growing up, my dad didn't hit us. That's something my mom still uses like proof that we had a good childhood. He never laid a hand on you, she'll say, as if words don't bruise. My dad's weapon was humiliation. He'd make jokes at my expense in front of relatives. He'd criticize my weight like it was a public service. He'd read my report cards out loud and pause on anything less than perfect with this disappointed sigh that made me feel like I was failing as a person. And if I cried, he'd call me sensitive. If I got angry, he'd call me ungrateful. My mom's role was quieter. She'd watch it happen and then later tell me, "That's just how he is." Like his personality was a force of nature and my feelings were the only thing that could be adjusted. The family mythology was clear: dad is the authority, mom keeps the peace, kids fall in line. My brother learned early that agreeing with dad made life easier. I learned early that being the difficult one got you targeted. When I was 23, I got a job offer in another state. It wasn't glamorous. It was entry-level, but it was in my field, and it was my first real shot at leaving. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, trying to sound casual, and saying, I think I'm going to take it. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. He just said, "Why? So you can go fail somewhere else?" I laughed awkwardly at the time, because I didn't know how else to survive. "It's a good job," I said. "It's a start." He finally looked at me then, eyes hard. "You'll come crawling back," he said. "You're not built for the real world. Family is the only reason you're anything." That sentence lived in my head for years. Not because it was true, but because it was planted there like a curse. Every time I struggled, I'd hear him, "You'll come crawling back." Every time I succeeded, I'd hear him too, but twisted into something else, "Don't get too proud. They'll take it away." So when I did leave, I did it quietly. I didn't throw a party. I didn't argue. I packed my car, hugged my mom, and my dad barely said goodbye. I drove away with my hands shaking on the steering wheel and my stomach twisting like I was committing a crime. That's what toxic families do to you, they make freedom feel like betrayal. The first year away was brutal. I had roommates who stole my food. I cried in the bathroom at work once because I got a passive-aggressive email and it triggered something deep in me. I worked overtime because I was terrified of being fired. I said yes to everything because no felt dangerous. I didn't have a safety net. But I had peace, the kind you don't recognize until you live in it for a while. And slowly, I got better. Not perfect. Better. I learned to speak up in meetings. I learned to say, "I can't take that on right now." I made friends who didn't treat my boundaries like insults. I started therapy because I kept having nightmares about being trapped in my childhood house. My therapist once said, "You're still trying to earn safety from people who profit from you feeling unsafe," and I cried because it was the first time someone put it into words. Eventually, the distance changed the dynamic. My parents couldn't control me as easily, so they tried a new strategy: guilt. They'd call with emergencies that weren't emergencies. "Your dad's blood pressure is high," my mom would say, as if my presence was medicine. They'd say relatives were asking why I never visited. They'd say my brother needed help. It always came back to the same message: your life is less important than your role in ours. The breaking point came 2 years ago when my dad called me after I posted a photo online of me standing in front of my first little house, keys in hand, smiling like I couldn't believe it. It was a simple post. No bragging. Just happiness. He called and didn't say congratulations. He said, "So you're really trying to prove you don't need us?" I remember sitting on my couch, staring at the wall, feeling that old guilt rise. "That's not what it is," I said carefully. "I'm just happy." He snorted. "Happy," he repeated like the word offended him. "You think money makes you somebody? You're still nothing without family." That time, I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. Something in me clicked. I realized no achievement would ever be received as joy. It would always be treated as a threat. I went low contact after that. Then no contact when he started showing up in my inbox with long messages about how I was abandoning my mother and disrespecting your father. My mom sent me paragraphs about how I was breaking her heart. My brother sent me a single line: "Can you just apologize so we can move on?" Apologize for what? For growing up? For leaving? For building a life? So I stopped responding. For months, it was quiet. And then, last month, my mom emailed me from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was dinner. Just that. No, how are you? No, I miss you. No acknowledgement of the last 2 years. A demand disguised as an invitation. I almost deleted it. I should have. But something in me, maybe guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe that little kid who still wanted a normal dad, made me reply. I said I'd meet them for dinner, public place, 1 hour. I told myself it would be different. It wasn't. Which brings me back to that restaurant, my dad leaning across the table saying I was nothing without them. When he said it, I looked at my mom and saw her waiting. Waiting for me to swallow it. Waiting for me to smooth it over so the evening could continue. Waiting for me to be the version of myself that kept their world comfortable. And I realized, in the simplest way, that I didn't owe them that anymore. I'm not going to do this, I said, calm but firm. I didn't drive 3 hours to be insulted. My dad's face reddened. Insulted? He barked. I'm telling you the truth. You think you're independent, but you're selfish. You've been selfish since you were a teenager. I took a slow breath. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice even. If telling the truth is important, I said, then here's mine. You don't get to call me nothing and still demand access to my life. My brother finally looked up, eyes wide, like he couldn't believe I was speaking. My mom's hands were clenched around her napkin. Claire, she whispered, warning in her tone. My dad pointed at me again. You think you're so strong, he said. Out there alone. But you don't know what real support is. You'll regret this when you need us. I could feel people at nearby tables pretending not to listen, but listening anyway. The waitress hovered awkwardly with a pitcher of water like she didn't know if she should intervene. I leaned back in my chair and looked at my dad like he was a stranger. I have needed you, I said quietly. My whole life. And you didn't show up as support. You showed up as criticism. You showed up as control. His mouth opened, but I kept going, because I rarely finished a sentence around him when I was younger. I'm not nothing without family, I said. I'm everything I built without your approval. I have friends who treat me with kindness. I have a career I worked for. I have a home I paid for. I have peace. And I have it because I'm not in the middle of your chaos every day. My dad laughed, sharp and mean. Peace, he scoffed. You're delusional. You're alone. And that was the line he thought would hit hardest, because to him, alone is the worst thing. Alone is what he uses to scare people back into the fold. But I wasn't scared. I was tired. And tired can be powerful. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but my spine felt straight. If being with family means being told I'm nothing, I said, then I'd rather be alone. My mom's eyes filled instantly. Please, she whispered. Don't do this. I looked at her, and for a second my chest tightened. I do love my mom. I hate that she's stuck in her own cycle. But loving someone doesn't mean surrendering yourself. I'm not doing this to you, I said softly. I'm choosing myself. My dad slammed his palm on the table hard enough that the silverware jumped. Sit down, he barked. You are not walking away from me. That was the moment the waitress stepped forward. Sir, she said carefully, is everything okay? I could feel heat rush through me, not embarrassment anymore. Just a weird sense of confirmation. This is what he does. This is what he's always done. He escalates when he loses control. I grabbed my purse. I'm leaving, I told the waitress, then looked at my family one last time. I hope you get help, I said, and I meant it more for my mom than my dad. Then I turned and walked out. In my car, my hands shook so badly I had to sit for a minute before turning the key. My phone buzzed immediately, my brother, then my mom, then my dad. I didn't answer. I stared out at the parking lot lights and felt tears come, hot and silent. Not because I missed them. Because I was mourning the fantasy. The idea that one dinner could fix what they refused to acknowledge. On the drive home, I felt lighter in a way that scared me. Like I'd finally dropped a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. I kept replaying my dad's line, "You're nothing without family," and I realized how backwards it was. He needed me to believe that so I'd stay. He needed me to believe I was nothing so he could feel like something. The next day, I blocked my dad's number again. I sent my mom one message, "I love you, but I won't accept disrespect. If you want a relationship, it has to be separate from dad and it has to include accountability." Then I put my phone down and went to work like my life mattered, because it does. It's been a few weeks now. My mom hasn't responded. My brother sent a final text. I can't deal with this, like my boundaries were the problem. Maybe they'll all tell people I'm cold. Maybe they'll say I'm selfish. I can't control their narrative. I can only control my access. And the truth is, my dad was wrong. I wasn't nothing without family. I was just nothing in his version of family, because his version required me to stay small. I'm not small anymore. Thanks for watching. If you've ever been told you're nothing without family by people who only call you family when you obey, share your story in the comments. I read them, and you never know who needs to hear that success isn't just money or titles, it's building a life where you can breathe.